that lead to what's most desirable and what we really want, which is predictable outcomes, right? That's all we get paid to do, and that's what we're here to do, is to take a set of drawings, some plans, some specifications, an idea that a customer wants, and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it. And then through all these techniques, conversations, text message, phone calls, and meetings, produce this outcome, right? And make it happen magically, you know? So,
hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the CM Mentors podcast. My name is Matt Graves. My co-host each week is Kyle Grandell. I can't talk today. How's it going, Kyle?
Yeah, it's going better for me than for you, Matt.
I'm just going to blame it. I'm just going to say there's a lag. That's what's going on.
Yeah, right. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm trying to drink a cup of coffee this afternoon to stay awake. We had a heavy chicken strip fingers basket for lunch, and I'm hurting. That's why I can't talk. I'm going to blame it on
that. Hey, I know what'll do. That chicken will put you to sleep, you know.
It's been a day. Anyway, This week's guest is another Kyle. It's Kyle Nitchen, and he's from. I kind of got to know him through LinkedIn, and also he has a really awesome Substack as well. So he puts out a lot of really great content. We had to get him on here to kind of talk about some of his content. So welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kyle. Yeah. Welcome. Pumped to be on. Glad to be here.
We're super glad to have you.
With two Kyles, I'm going to make sure I stay far away so we don't have any drywall damage or anything like that. So.
Yeah. No, you be careful, and I want some Monster Energy or something too.
So Kyle, Texas is actually right by Austin, and they had a big Kyle festival. I don't know, every Kyle in America probably heard about it. I'm trying to get Grandell to come down to go to it, but anyway.
I had some people forward me some memes.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, I guess it was good. My thing on that was like there was nothing that actually drew me to go there because there was this big gathering and like they talked about it could be a world record setter, but if they showed us that hey, we have these attendees and we might actually make it close, I'd get on a plane in an instant. I'd be like, oh yeah, I gotta be there for this. But they don't do anything to bring you there, so what a waste.
They didn't sell it very hard. It was like the third year in a row they tried. They were like, yeah, show up, maybe we'll do it. Like that was it. Okay.
I hope they hear this and change their ways.
I'm sure they will. Well, Kyle, for people who don't know who you are, you can give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah. So background on me. So first you mentioned my Substack, and Matt, you were the actual person that inspired me to start that. I first came across the Construction Curiosities newsletter first, and that's when I was like, I want to try one of these things, and I think I can do it. And I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for getting me to get going there and introduce me there. But
you actually put out smart content and not just stupid stuff like I do. So
no, yours is good too. Very useful. But yeah, I'm in the construction industry. I'm a senior project manager for a national construction management firm, Layton Construction, and been in the industry for about 10 years, coming on 10 years, to the beginning of next year. And so I grew up kind of in between, traveling around in between Canada and Colorado. And after high school, I wasn't really very good in the traditional school system and didn't really, get good grades or anything like that. I just couldn't really focus in that environment. So after high school, I really didn't have a plan for myself and didn't know what my next steps were. So I didn't go on to college. I went into working for a local landscape contractor. And I was doing landscaping and labor work. And for me at that time, 18 years old, it was awesome. And I loved it. I worked on a crew and, we got together. We did cool projects, commercial, residential, landscape houses, built waterfalls. And it was fun. So that was my first intro into the industry. Fast forward a few years, I did, kind of connect some dots and, said, I want to figure out a little deeper, a little better of a plan for myself. And I ended up going on to school, and I went to Colorado State University. and still didn't know what degree I wanted or anything like that. But with my background and getting to the point where I kind of had to choose a degree, that's why you go. I found out about this construction management degree, and having that background in landscaping kind of really helped me kind of like, oh, you know what? I have that experience. I liked it. It was cool. I want to work outside and, get things done. And so I got a construction management degree, and it turned out to be really good and worked out well for me. So that's how I got connected with who I work for now, Layton, and I've been traveling the country building, hospitality, hotels, and ultimately ending in healthcare, which I am right now, and leading projects and operations here in Southern California. And it's been a heck of a journey, and learning a lot. And I couldn't be more excited to be in this space, especially right now. I just feel like it's an exciting time. There's some important problems that we need to address and figure out, and we're at the forefront of it. So it's exciting. Yeah.
Heck yeah. So first, really quick. So you got into landscaping first, which is freaking hard work, man. And you still want to do construction afterwards?
You want to do construction management afterwards?
Jeez, hats off to you.
Believe it or not, yeah. It was hard work. I mean, it was digging trenches, planting trees, humping sod and bricks. But it was cool. Luckily, I'm a hockey player. Grew up playing hockey, and committed to a team and a goal. So hard work was kind of built into that. So that part didn't really steer me away that much. So it was cool.
Awesome.
So what's you've been with Layton your whole career so far?
I have, right? Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. You don't see that very often. But what's the coolest project you worked
on? Two come to mind. First was my first project coming right out of school, which was a 3-building development where we built a performing arts center, a small hotel, and a parking structure. But it was for this really fancy developer that was out of Argentina, and it was right on the ocean in Miami Beach. So that was a crazy project, and that was me just knowing nothing in the industry, being my first project and kind of learning from the fire hydrant. But it ended up like just the scope and the location and the owner and the situation was very unique. And so when we walked away from that project of what we built, it was just like, whoa, like it was one of those world-class designs, And so I was very fortunate. That's where I kind of met my first mentor and kind of saw how he operated and set the bar for a influential project manager. And we can get into that later. But that was an incredible experience. And then one other came to mind was really my first big project that I took on my own. Was just a high-end healthcare project in Beverly Hills, California. It was a pediatric critical care unit that was sponsored by a donor and just essentially wanted to be done at light speed. So that whole process and it being my first real big one on my own was a really cool experience too. Learned a lot. It was painful at moments, but when it was all said and done, and it was just like an amazing experience. Yeah,
those are cool when you kind of take a step back. I've had a couple like that where it's just like your whole life's a blur for like a year or 2 years, and you step back and you're like, man, that was kind of cool. But you were just like everything was flying when you were doing it.
Yeah, we do some cool things. Here.
Definitely. I want to take a break right quick from this because it's Kyle's favorite game. Where he has to try to move it all around the podcast. I didn't do it last week.
I know. So you're throwing me off here. I was ready for this later.
So I know Kyle Nitchen's going to we get into his 7 archetypes here in a minute, but I want to get this out of the way first because this is my favorite part of the podcast. So Kyle,
let's do it.
I show a meme for the people who listen to this and don't watch the video. and Kyle Grandell has to describe it for everybody.
Yes.
And also,
all right.
in case the listeners don't know this, I haven't seen this ahead of time. This is totally not. This is not planned at all because this is part of Matt Graves' sick enjoyment. So
I don't know if anybody likes this, but I do. So.
All right, here we go. Oh yes, this is amazing.
This is my favorite meme ever. It was actually when I was thinking about Kyle, I was thinking about the Substack, and I was thinking like when I did it, I started putting memes in the Substack. This was in episode 1 because like this is I guess my first construction meme I ever saw. So anyway,
I love this. So for those that can't see, we've got what looks to be some kind of architectural drawing, and it's a small snippet of one, but it's got some dimensions on it. The word kitchen, and then it's clouded, which is probably some kind of a rev to the drawing set or something. But something's happened here, and the tradesman took it a little literally. And in the picture below the schematic drawing is what appears to be a concrete ceiling, and they had actually drilled out this cloud in the floor. So you can imagine there is a hole in the floor that is the shape of this rev cloud on this drawing. And then the words say, please be careful when you put revision clouds on your drawings. Some of the contractors do not understand.
That's gold.
That's a good one. I like that.
That is construction meme number 1 that I've ever I don't know. I liked it forever ago. So
that's a classic.
Took it a little too literally on that one. But hey, we installed it per the drawing.
It's done per plans and specs, literally.
Yep. If you're in per the plan, you're never wrong.
It's the scale. It's got the same. I mean, I counted the cloud bubbles. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
Anyway, back on topic. We talked about influential project manager, and that's the title of your Substack. So, what is an influential project manager?
Yeah. So the influential project manager is really, for me, it's an ideal. It's an ideal. It's something that I strive to be, and I think that other project leaders should strive to be. Whatever superintendents, project manager, it doesn't really matter. But it's somebody that has the soft skills and the hard skills that are required to wear the many caps that we have to wear. And I've kind of like summarized it in a framework and put it together in a framework that I call the 7 archetypes of the influential project manager. So that's what that is. And other than that, the newsletter half of it is kind of just the brand and talking about how to develop and create more project leaders through the strategies, the frameworks, and the best practices that lead to what's most desirable and what we really want, which is predictable outcomes, right? That's all we get paid to do, and that's what we're here to do, is to take a set of drawings, some plans, some specifications, an idea that a customer wants, and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And then through all these techniques, conversations, text message, phone calls, and meetings, produce this outcome, right? And make it happen magically, So that's it's the challenge, and it's the fun part, and that's what construction management is, I guess, at the when you distill it down, is producing predictable outcomes. It's both at the macro level and the micro level. The 7 archetype framework that we can get into is the 7 archetypes, which are really behavior types that are most likely to give you these predictable outcomes. And so those 7 are the communicator, the enforcer, the builder, the leader, the attorney, the accountant, and the business developer. So, and those are the.
Take a step back. This is like 1 p.m. Like one person needs to wear all 7 of these hats. Essentially, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and be able to just lean into these as needed and have them so I guess the goal is to be as well rounded as you can. So because we're on all these diverse projects, diverse situations. A project essentially is a little mini business, right? It's got everything that a business has. It has cash flow, it has contracts, resources, schedules, people, teams. It's got everything that any business has. So yeah, those when you're leading that effort, you need a wide range of tools and behaviors that you're comfortable with. And we all have our strengths too. Like some of us are more communicators, and some of us are more maybe number savvy and good with the spreadsheets, and others are just good with people and good at leading others. But the goal is to really just be well rounded. So as we go through and talk about these frameworks, it's good to pick one or two that you may think that you're not as satisfied with or not as proficient in, and just work on one or two of them and then improve that, and then maybe go on to a couple others. But keep in mind that all these are important, and to do this well, you got to learn a little bit of everything. We wear a lot of different hats.
No, yeah, well said, man. And Kyle, I've been following you for quite a while now, your newsletter and stuff, and you put out some great stuff. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, quite often I tell my team, if you haven't subscribed already, you need to. And by the way, here's some good stuff for you this week. Like, I'm forwarding your stuff around because I'm like, this is some great stuff that applies to our project right now that we need to be thinking about. And so I'm trying to help spread the word. It's such valuable information. One of the things I really love, and you just said it a minute ago, was producing predictable outcomes. A lot of times people get stuck in this mode of, you got to have the highest quality, you got to bring in the lowest cost for the customer. That's not necessarily the truth. What they want is they want to hire you, and they want to get what they need to get. It could be different, and it also could change, but they want it to be predictable. That's why they hire you again and again and again. So I love that point. That is so key and so critical to being successful.
Yeah, well said. And that outcome could change midway through a project. And as long as you reestablish with your customer that, hey, we have a new outcome and here's what we're going to do. It might, whatever may happen, it might be more money, it might be a different direction. But like I said, that's why I said it's at the macro and the micro. You got to be able to predict the next week, the next 3 weeks, and also the whole outcome, which is the project, so it's everywhere, and these behaviors are what gets you there, are how you operate. So,
and you really can't do it without them, because just like you just said, projects can change and the outcomes can change, and you have to be flexible, and you have to, at the high level, you got to be able to picture what the customer wants. Even if they can't exactly tell you, you got to kind of read their mind and see the direction the project's going and advise them. And they need to come to grips with it, and you need to be able to produce it at the end of the day. And if you don't understand it from those different perspectives, you can't communicate it and you can't produce it. So, I mean, it's brilliant, man. It's awesome.
I want to piggyback on what Kyle was saying a minute ago about, just again, hyping up your Substack, because it really is great. Like, I was going to write an MEP, kind of a MEP 101, and it was on my hit list. And you put one out, and I was like, well, shit, I can't beat that. I'm just going to share this one. Right? It was so good, man. It was so good.
Awesome.
It was.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I wrote it just for, like I think we wrote it for the person I was, a few years ago, and just needing to know it, because I've been schooled in so many MEP situations that it's so useful to know, and you can be that more, much more effective as a manager.
100%. I've seen a lot of construction managers who don't understand the MEP stuff probably well enough. And so it was really good. I mean, it was really the one-on-one level, but then, I mean, there was enough information in there that, I mean, I'm going to link to that in the show notes, because it was great. I'm writing myself a note, but no, it was good stuff, man. So talking about these 7 archetypes, and obviously some people are stronger at some and weaker on others. And obviously ideally you're perfect on all 7, right? But like, that's never going to happen. there's, a lot of people say don't even worry about your weaknesses. Build up your strengths and build a team to complement your weaknesses, right? I mean, obviously you need to work on some of your weaknesses. You can't be a complete failure in some of them, right? But I mean, what's your thoughts on putting together, trying to put together a team around you, or around a project team construction is kind of weird, right? Because you may be with this project team, and the next one you get shuffled up and sent out to this one, and it's hard to. I don't know if people put a lot of thought into that sort of thing, of like what their strengths are necessarily.
Yeah, and you're right. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. We all have our personality traits and our character traits that kind of come with us through the way we grow up and the environments we've been in and the environments that we're in. But behavior is something that can be changed. There's like a lot of studies on being able to change your behavior and improve your behavior. And the first thing to do is become aware of it. And so when you're aware of your behavior and what behavior you need to produce, then that's the first step in being able to change. Yeah, and like you said, you can use others and find other means to shore up your weaknesses, but once you go to that next project, you might not have that. Or you might come in this other situation and you might not have that. But what I've found is that if you really have, like, you lean a lot into the leadership, the leader, the team leader, or the communicator, you're really strong in that area, but you have some really big gaps in the attorney category or the accountant category, you're gonna really find yourself in some big gaps. You're not going to be able to really compensate for that. That's something you can't always outsource and lean on others for. You kind of have to have some knowledge and some way, an understanding of how to get yourself out of certain situations. So that's why it's important to think of that. And you're not going to be 100% perfect in any of them, and that's not the expectation. It's really just to be aware and to understand when you might need to improve, or maybe you need to go out and find the knowledge or find the mentor that can help you when you come across that situation. And because project managers were risk managers too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just had to chime in because again, your point was spot on, man. And that example was me. So a couple of years ago, even my business had been running for about 5 years, and I was still like an accounting moron is the best phrase I'll use for these listeners. But I didn't know shit, man. Like it was like I had a business running and I was starting to hire people, and I was like, I don't know what I don't know. I probably better start getting up on this stuff. And so I went and brought on an accounting firm, got them doing my bookkeeping for me. It was only months later that we were starting to have problems. Like I wasn't getting what I thought I should be getting, wasn't getting them what they needed. At the end of the day, it was me not understanding enough to be able to communicate in their language what they needed and what they wanted. So there's this big breakdown of communication between us. They thought I was asking for something. I thought I was asking for something different. So like we were butting heads for a while, and finally we had this meeting and we sat down for an hour, talked through all of our issues, and I realized that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about with this stuff. So and I'm still not an expert today, but I know a heck of a lot more now because of it. And it's just, but those little things, wearing that hat, just to be able to communicate effectively, is huge.
Yeah, exactly. Just to be able to know what you need and what you want. So it's kind of like, if you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you need to know just enough to know what you don't know, and then you can get yourself out of the situation and maybe get your project back on track, or, make that customer that much happier. Yeah.
So do you want to go in a little bit more depth on each one of the 7 and kind of what each one is? And,
yeah.
Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but just kind of want to go through them.
Yeah. Let's just talk through them. And just so everyone knows what an archetype is, we can quickly define that as basically it's a behavior type. It's a mental model. It's kind of like how you hear it a lot about in stories and stuff, like how we understand each other. It's kind of a behavior model to help us, like, I've heard of the hero archetype and the shadow archetype. So that's what these are meant to be, is just to remind that person who's really strong in that area is like, okay, what would the communicator do here? in this situation? What would the attorney do in this? So we'll go through each one. The first one is the communicator. And as you can imagine, like you said, these are pretty self-explanatory, but projects are fueled on communication. And the communicator is the one who excels in that. They can communicate verbally, non-verbally, in writing. They can present, they can communicate their ideas. They're the master of clear communication, which clear communication is huge. It's when the idea in my head is and the idea in your head is the exact same. It's a mirror image after I communicate it to you. So there's no gaps. There's no misunderstanding. You know exactly what I'm thinking. So the communicator is the one who's able to transmit that very clearly, and they're also very attuned to their audience. They know who they're talking to. They know who's on the other side of that email. They know what that person's tendencies are. They might even know that this person is a highly dominant personality. This person's not a highly dominant personality. So I'm going to tune my communication to that person. So that's it, and it's incredibly important on a project, especially architects and engineers are very wired differently than subcontractors and your plumbing foreman. So you got to be able to talk to two way different types of people, and that message is going to look a lot different. So yeah,
communication and construction has got, I mean, when you really take a step back and think about it, like you just explained it, is wild, because sometimes you're talking to the architect and the engineer and they want something maybe very technical. You're talking to the foreman, he wants stuff maybe in layman's terms, right? Or at least in his technical terms, right? You're talking to the building owner who may not even know anything about construction, right? You're trying to explain that to them, but then you have to do it verbally, written. Sometimes you actually literally draw pictures, right? Like sketches out in the field. Like there's so many ways you have to communicate differently to different people, and it's very difficult. And the guys who do it well, the guys and girls that do it well, like they're amazing,
Yeah, stand out as a leader right away.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've all seen that meme that goes around in the industry where it's basically the tire swing. Like there's a swing in a tree, and it's like what the customer wanted, what the engineer designed, what the CAD guy created, and then what was actually built. And it's just
what was budgeted. And
yeah, we got to find that and put that in the comments or something too. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, if you want to go into number 2, the next one is the enforcer. And this one's a tricky one. I think I see most people struggle with this. It can be challenging. And the enforcer is the one who fearlessly upholds accountability at all levels, right? We all have a role. We all have a responsibility. And that includes owners, architects, people on our team. They're holding everyone accountable to the goals, making sure that everyone's contributing, doing what they need to get done when it needs to get by. They're not only holding others accountable, but they're holding themselves accountable, because that's what really fuels high performance and the art of getting these things done. So it's just consistently holding people accountable, holding others accountable, holding themselves accountable, and enforcing that up and down the chain of command. Yeah. And that one's tough because sometimes it requires like hard conversations. It requires a lot of follow-up and changing things, the way things are done. But that's the enforcer archetype.
I mean, that may be, I'm just thinking through them all, that may be one of the harder ones, maybe for soft skills, of just having to enforce, but do it tactfully and empathetically at times. And it's just, maybe one of the harder ones for me, I guess, maybe too. Just, I mean, I feel like over the years, I've gotten a lot better at it. I know 13 years ago when I graduated college and I started out, I wasn't good at it. Like, here's your contract, do what your contract says, shut up and go away. That type of thing, where that never works well. So.
Exactly.
Well, it's also really tough too, because holding people accountable takes a lot of time and effort, and we all get so busy in whatever we're doing that for us to also do that and make sure everybody else is doing what they have to do, that's a lot of work. And it's really easy to let that stuff slide and say, you know what, they didn't get it done, but we'll figure it out next week. Well, guess what? Next week when you're busy, that's going to pile on your list of things to do. So then it'll be the next week and the next week. And the more of those things that go by, the more your project spirals out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. The best approach is really just creating that culture of accountability, and enforcing it. It's like, how many times, like, when you have to get on somebody, they're not keeping their job, their end of the job site clean, not cleaning up after themselves, not, those little things. And, but once you create a culture, it's like, no, the job site's always clean. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, so that's the influential project managers, like running that type of organization and that type of environment. That's the enforcer. It's like, no, this is the standard, and we need to be up here. That's the, I guess, the approach there.
I love that.
Yeah.
Number three is the builder. And as you can imagine, that is more or less the archetype of the superintendent, the one that is the expert in their craft. They prioritize efficiency. They build in a way that minimizes waste, in a very lean way, methodically, and they optimize the value. They understand. Well, did I just mute myself? Nope.
Good.
Oh, there we go. I clicked some other button. So they optimize value, and they minimize waste. So they build and run work in a very methodical, lean, efficient way. And they also understand all the building systems, MEP, materials, means and methods, these types of things. They're builders. They know how things go together. They know what all the trades need and how they get their work done. And so when I tell everyone that's coming into the industry, like project engineers and interns and anyone really, that you need to spend a lot of time in the field, getting to know how the work goes in, how it goes into place, how the trades think. Because again, that's you working on your builder archetype. And it makes you that much more effective a manager, because it's hard to manage things that you don't fully understand. Like your accounting example. When you know how to speak the language of the trades, you can take that and speak it to the owner, and speak it to the client, speak it to the architect. And so that's that archetype is working and improving on that. And that's what I spent a lot of time doing at the front end of my career.
Well, and that's really good advice there too. We'll come back to in a second. But one of the things that came to mind for me was, everybody talks about, can you look at the drawings and the specs, and can you visualize the structure that you're about to build, whatever that is. But the best builders, the ones that are really skilled, they know how it's going to get built, not just what it's going to look like at the end, but they know how that wall is going to get put into place. They know the steps to get that CMU finished up and get those masons in there. They know how that roof structure is going to get set. They know how the plumbing's. They know the how, not just the finished product.
I think they visualize it in a time sequence too, right?
Yeah.
Like you've seen like those time lapse videos, or sometimes they're animations where you see the whole building get built, right? And it's like the conduit, the ductwork's just kind of flying in place. Well, I imagine like they're just like envisioning the building going in layers. And so those superintendents like you're talking about, that I'm picturing like the crusty gray-haired old superintendent. He's kind of a little bit cranky, but he knows every trade better than the on-site foreman does, right? Like he's like mentoring the on-site superintendents for the trades crafts, and he almost seems to know their work better than they do, because he's been doing it. And he's a student of it, right? And like anyway, those guys are super valuable.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly who I think of as the gray-haired superintendent. That's can build anything. And you know what's cool is that they not only see, you know, the real picture of what's on, they see what they can look at a plan and see what's not on the plans. They can say, oh, I can tell you, you know, this is calling for a vertical expansion. Well, I can tell you that what we're going to need to build is a pedestrian walkway to protect pedestrians. It's like, whoa, you would never see that on the plan. Architect would never even think of to draw that, but he knows how to build it, and he knows what it's going to take, and he knows all the building codes that are relevant. So
maybe one day I'll be able to do that. I feel like I can read plans pretty good, but when you look at them and all you see is the problems jumping out at you, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like X-ray vision or something like that, and so you can see the trouble spots, you can see the missing things. It's like,
so that's the ideal. So that's the builder archetype. And the fourth one is the leader or the captain. I went back and forth between the leader or the captain, but the same type of message. And that's the one who puts themselves or puts the team and the mission in front of themselves and above their own personal interest. They exemplify like dedication and taking ownership for every task, regardless of its nature. And so they're natural motivators, and they build an environment that encourages growth and future leaders, and inspires future leaders through like passion and dedication. So yeah, they're team people. They know how to lead and manage others, and they can get people following the lead and doing what they need to do. They make people better.
It's funny because I was thinking like leader. It's like I was thinking, well, that's kind of the same as a communicator, but no, it's different. Like it's different, really, kind of different skill set. I guess all these kind of play off of one another, right, for the most part. But they are all independently important.
Yeah. And
especially because that leader has a lot of stuff going on, and at the end of the day, it's like all the different problems they're dealing with, but they still got to be able to corral it in a way to put the team first, because at the end of the day, they need the team to get the job done. So
yeah,
exactly, and that's a key one. You can like a high performance team. I think like just through my background in sports, and also being on a lot of construction teams. One of the commonalities I found that is the highest performing teams usually have a very strong leader. You know, they have a leader that's it's more of a functional leader, not a guy that is up giving speeches and, you know, it's really a guy that can carry water and, you know, doesn't mind doing thankless tasks in the shadows. Like, you know, it's really just a leader, like a Tom Brady, you know, who's just can lead the team, onboard people, and is just trying to make his team better. He's trying to multiply others, trying to give them opportunity.
You see that a lot, especially like in the NFL. I'm sure it happens in sports too, but I see it in the NFL a lot where they'll have a guy, they'll bring in some, you know, 15-year veteran wide receiver, right? Because there's a whole bunch of young kids in the wide receiver core, and they'll bring this 15-year veteran and just put them with them, right? Just to kind of be that leader. And you never hear about him. He may make 10 catches all season, right? Like he's not doing anything on the field, but him being in that locker room and just with his presence and his leadership, just like it just elevates the whole team. So
exactly. Number 5 is the attorney archetype. So that one, you know, in construction, in what we do, architectural and AEC, we're all bound by contracts. We're all tied together via contracts. You know, we're in a contract with the owner, the GC's into contract with the subcontractors, the trade partners, and there's contracts that flow down from there. So we're all tied together via contracts. So we need to be able to speak that language. We need to know how to navigate legal obligations and how to interpret contracts and also communicate them out. We need to know what they mean and what they mean for how we need to behave, and, you know, what kind of notice we need to give and how much notice we need to give, what time, what happens when claims happen, disputes, disagreements, things of that nature. That's just part of the business, and that's how we're all tied together. They're essentially like the playbook of construction. It's our playbook. So the attorney is the one who is proficient in that and can, minimize risk and use these things to keep everyone safe and compliant. So it's a key skill set. Again, it's something you just need to practice with and work on.
It's funny. So many people, it was like the 25 hacks I did. Like number one was RTFC, read the contract. And because so many people, especially when you're starting out in the industry, right? Like you're working for a contractor, like you're bound by the contract, right? But and that tells you everything you need to know. And I mean, with the plans and specs those are contract documents. They're part of your contract. But people just don't take the time to understand it and read it. And I guess it's because it's boring. It's probably of all these things, of all your archetypes, it's probably the least sexy, right? No one wants to read the contract. It's boring. It's painful. It's got words I don't know how to spell. It's just not fun.
Exactly. But I can tell once you do get it and kind of understand, a lot of contracts, they're the same. There's very few changes between them, and kind of once you understand the themes of the contract, it doesn't become so scary. And then you kind of know, okay, I can communicate this. I can put this in the layman's terms, and if I do that, we're all going to be better. It's not a weapon. It's not a threat. It's a roadmap.
Yeah.
It's a guideline, it's a playbook, and there's reasons why everything's written in a contract. It's because something went wrong before and somebody got screwed. So
you can tell those 100-year-old contractors too, when they got their contracts this thick, because it's everything that's ever went wrong for the last 100 years got a clause, add a clause. And so those guys
and you can't redline anything.
No.
So. Well, and especially the attorney one in my mind is so important because when you can understand the contracts and the different contracts and how they play together, how they're connected, that's when you can predict the problems that are going to come up 5 steps down the road. Hey, if we decide to make this change today, this is how it's going to screw up this sub in 3 months from now. When it could be a contractual thing that could come back to bite us in the ass. It could come back to bite the customer and the owner. So when you can advise them as a construction manager and say, I'm not so sure you want to do that, and here's why, they appreciate that too. So it's also something to be, something to be said for bringing that extra value to the customer. And maybe that part's not even in your contract, but if you can tell them, hey, I'm advising you on this, you might want to consider this. They're usually pretty thankful.
Yeah, and in your organization too is going to really appreciate it too. Managing your risk, handling it properly, ethically. It's really good. As long as you get your contract bases good and everyone's safe and compliant. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. It can be positive. Yeah. All right, number 6. 6 is the accountant. Again, a little self-explanatory.
This is probably the least sexy one.
Yeah, this can be. But the fact is, construction, sometimes we underestimate or kind of don't give ourselves enough credit. We manage millions of dollars. Millions of dollars come across our desks, and we touch and we're responsible for. It may not be ours, but it's somebody's. So the accountant archetype is the one who's really financially literate. They're strong in finances. They're strong in important financial information, knowing how to understand cash flow and forecasting expenses and managing budgets and knowing how to chop up and categorize all these numbers. So ultimately we can make really informed decisions and really profitable decisions, if it might be. But, you know, there's a number of ways you can manage your money and your job and set your job up. And the more informed you are about where your money is, how you're going to use it, where it's going, and what the plan is, you know, the better off everyone's going to be. You can run a really good operation that way. So it's important too.
I jokingly say it's probably the least sexy of them all, but I mean, they're all important, but I would say like at least out of 7 things, if you could, you know, put stress to each one, probably half your stresses are typically money related, right? Like cash flow, making pay, you know, especially with some smaller subcontractors and stuff, they're always trying to make payroll. They're always just fighting that, right? Like,
Yeah.
when companies, you know, start to spiral, like it's usually a money problem, right? Like I was working for a company who basically grew too fast. I mean, they were wildly successful. They grew so fast they went bankrupt because their cash flow couldn't keep up, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then you started getting into some lawsuits, and then it just went up so fast and just crashed so hard, and it was all money related. It just wasn't managed right. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
it's so important.
Yeah. It's a good example. So that's the accountant, and then that's number 6. Number 7, the last archetype, is the business developer. So that archetype is about the fact that we can't do just one project in our career, right? We can't run a business and just do one. There's got to be another project after that. There's got to be another client, another opportunity after that. So we can do this all over again. And that's what the business development behaviors are. They look like the person who's really good at building relationships, being genuine, knowing what their clients' needs are, getting what their need, and really, genuinely caring about people. It's like they're good with people. They're like the sales guys. They're the BD guys. The guys that are good with people and take care of their clients. Treat them right. Take them out to dinner every once in a while. Get to know their families.
Mm-hmm.
Get to know about them, what their interests are. Hey, take them hunting. Whatever it may be. Building a relationship outside of just getting your project done. It's like, this is Kyle. He did my project. He did a great job, and he also took time to build a relationship. And I'd want to kind of work with him in the future. We had a good time, and maybe there's some repeat work out of it. So that's another key skill, and that might be my weakest skill. Just being honestly, is I could improve a lot, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on now in my career. Is how can I, build more better, relationships, other than just focusing so much on all these other things that I got to manage, but taking a step back and, you know what, all right, let's go have lunch or something and just not talk about anything but the project.
Yeah, that's Cody Fournier. That's one of her big soapboxes she gets on. It's kind of that seller doer, right? And really building those relationships and really being a great business development person on top of being a great, construction manager and stuff. So that's kind of the punchline of a lot of stuff she does. But I see it a lot too. Obviously, there's a fair share of whining and dining and that sort of stuff that goes along with any sort of business development. But a lot of times it's like any contractor out there can build a building. I'm talking in stereotypical terms, right? Anybody can build a building, but what is the experience like for the building owner? What is the experience like for the end client? And if you're fighting them every way, and it's just a bad experience, they may end up with like a world-class, top-of-the-notch building. But if the experience was bad, they're not going to hire you for the next project, right? Like, they have a bad taste in their mouth, even though you built them an amazing facility. But even if say there's some hiccups along the way, and today, there's problems every day on a construction site, right? Whether it's lead times or your air handlers didn't show up, they're supposed to show up today, and sorry, you'll get them in 3 months, and you're scrambling trying to figure out what plan B or plan D by that point, who knows? But as long as the client has a good experience along the way, you communicate with them, and all these other things that on your list. Like, to me, that's what business development for a project manager is, just making sure they have a great experience, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Spot on, Matt.
Yeah, and it's Matt. I forget who we talked about with this before, but we got into this topic of business development, and the hardest. It was definitely Cody, actually. Now that I think about this, because the hardest part is that of all the other topics, there is no material out there that tells you how to do it, the best way to do it. This is what's going to work for you. It's really like you got to have the right skill set and personality, and you have to be somebody that engages with people, and you got to figure out what makes them tick, and then that's how you build that relationship. To me, it's the most challenging one too, and even more than accounting, which I suck at and openly admitted to on this podcast session. But it's tough because there's just you kind of have to figure it out on your own. Even working with somebody that does it, what works for them may not work for you. It depends on your personality.
Well, business development, you got to make it your own too, right? Like somebody might be really good at like taking people golfing and just striking up in that personal relationship, those sort of things, really getting to know their family and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that's not important, but somebody else may have something else that's kind of their specialty, right? Or whatever you want to call it. But you've really got to, a lot of that too is just being yourself, right? And so you gotta make it your own.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. It's got to be authentic,
100%.
Authentic to you. Yeah.
Otherwise, you real quickly turn into the used car salesman, right? You can get that once people think you're that, like you're out, like they don't care no more.
Yeah.
Yeah, authentic, and then Kyle, you use the word genuine. That's huge. I mean, if people think that you're genuine, they want to work with you. Just even for that simple fact, because they trust you that you're not going to just throw them under the bus and that you're going to have each other's backs when stuff goes wrong, because it does. Stuff goes wrong on every project, no matter what project it is. Stuff goes wrong. So when they trust you're going to have their back, that's when things really start to happen.
I mean, the best GCs I've worked with are the ones that, when it goes wrong, they say, hey, we screwed up, or hey, this happened. Like, this is what happened. This is what we're doing to fix it. And then you're just like, sounds good. Like you can't, you can't even be mad, right? You're like, okay, cool. Like it happened. You've either fixed it before you even brought it to me, or it's like, you've got a plan of how it's going to get fixed. And you're just like, okay, sounds good. Like,
can't argue with that. No. Yeah.
So out of these 7, I mean, overall, each person has different strengths and weaknesses, obviously. What do you think the one people struggle with the most, just in general?
I think the enforcer is a big one. Upholding a standard. That's the one I see is most often, and I often find myself either coaching or working on that myself too. Is like, okay, letting people get by when underneath the standards, underneath what the rules are, what equates to the outcomes that I want. And then also being a leader. The leader's also a tough one too. Just the emotional intelligence component and the character traits, those are hard things to manage, so I think those two are probably the ones I see that are people struggle with the most.
I get the question now. So and I have my own answer to this, so I want to ask you first, Kyle, and Matt, I want to get your opinion too. What do you guys think out of those 7 is the one that people think they're really good at, but they actually are not good at it at all?
I would say maybe
I'm generalizing. I'm generalizing the whole industry here, but I want to get your opinions.
Yeah, that's tough. I would maybe the communicator. Some people can easily think that they're good communicators, but you get a 360 analysis on somebody with getting some outside perspectives, and they're like, are you sure about that? Yeah. What about you, Matt?
I was going to say either communicator or leader. The same thing on the communicator. Like, everyone thinks they're a good communicator until somebody goes and does something wrong, right? And then it's your fault. Like, why didn't you do what I told you to do? You get that all the time, right? It's like, well, obviously I love that analogy you said earlier, where like the picture in my head has to equal exact mirror the picture in your head. And if I tell you to go do something, right, and you go do something completely different, well, obviously those pictures didn't match.
There was a mismatch. Yep.
And a lot of people, again, I'm painting the whole industry here, but a lot of people, it's your fault. Like, you screwed this up. You didn't do what I told you to do.
Yeah. I told you so. I told you so. Yeah.
Well, and that's why it's so tough, because just saying it is only part of the equation. Did the person actually understand it? Did the situation reinforce what you were saying and how you were saying it? Were there other things going on, other dynamics? Was the person even paying freaking attention to you when you were talking to them? There's so much that goes into being a good communicator. It's tough.
You want to be a good communicator, practice, go coach 5-year-old baseball. Like I'm doing that right now, and it's like you talk about people not paying attention to you. Like they're staring at you, and you can tell they're just like staring at ghosts. Like there's nothing. Like they're glad. Like it's hot. They don't want to be there, and it's like,
oh yeah, you got to pull out all the tools for that. The voice, the body language, the timing. Oh yeah.
I'm the assistant coach on our team, and our sort of head coach yesterday at practice. He said something like, "All right, whoever does this right, I'm going to bring gummy bears for him next practice." Like he's gotten to the bribing now. Like,
yeah.
But,
yeah.
This was good, Kyle. I'm going to link to your Substack and all those other things. But any other little gold nuggets you want to leave with any kind of the up and coming construction managers coming up in the industry?
I would say out of the 7 archetypes, I would just say take them, write them down, and pick 1 or 2 to focus on. Don't need to, this isn't something that's gonna, you're gonna study and learn in 1 month, 1 year even. Just be aware of them. Pick 1 or 2 to work on at a time, focus on, and just incorporate them into your management style, and keep pursuing the ideal of your predictable outcomes. Just keep trying to do that, and you're going to have a really great career in this industry. And if you are in this industry or thinking about getting in this industry, do it. Keep at it, because it's an exciting time right now. I think there's a lot going on and a lot of innovation that's happening, and there's a lot of good voices out there, you guys being a couple of them. And I just couldn't be more excited and grateful for it all. So that's all I would add on that.
Appreciate it, man. You're one of those voices too that's definitely helping pass the torch. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Kyle. Kyle, no drywall was damaged in this recording.
We did it. Thanks, guys. Had a blast.
Thanks so much. It was a great time.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.